Number 10. The Aghori. The Aghori is a religious cult that broke away from the Hindu religion in the 14th century. They believe everything is God and they chase spiritual liberation with their acts. Some of their more tame rituals involve drinking urine and eating human feces, or smothering human ashes on their faces. And those are the tame ones. Their most important ritual to them is called Shav Putra, and for it they need human corpses. That in itself is hard to find in the area as nearly everyone is cremated. Those who aren't cremated, usually because the family can't afford it, are sometimes dumped into the Ganges River. So to find corpses, the Aghori monks fish them out of the river. Now, once they have a dead body, they meditate on it and then chop the head off as it holds the most energy. After that, some of the Aghoris eat the flesh of the body, cannibalistically, unfortunately. Now, this all stems from the belief that they can't please God if they don't do this human sacrifice. They even keep the skulls of the dead as a reminder of the impermanence of life. Quite Hamlet, if I do say so myself. At number 9, the Vampire Clan. So in the 90s, a 16-year-old named Ron Farrell was also apparently a 500-year-old vampire. Identify as you want, man. But Farrell, or Vestago, his vampy alter ego, was a part of a vampire cult. This little clan made up of 3 other teens would engage in rituals where they would drink one another's blood. Does that sound sanitary? No. But is that the scariest thing they did? Also no. In 1996, the 2 boy vampires of the group thought vigilantes of themselves and decided to help out a friend. Farrell had an old friend from high school he went to in Florida, and she told him she was miserable living at home with her folks. And I think I know what you're thinking. Did they kidnap her? No, much worse. The 2 vigilante vampiric teens beat both of her parents to death with a crowbar. Then Visago burned a letter V into the girl's father's body. When he was found out, he received a life sentence for the murders. Number 8. The Birdman Cult. On Easter Island, one era of inhabitants was the Birdman Cult era. The people of Easter Island, the Rapa Nui, came up with an interesting yearly ritual to determine who led them. The eventual leader would be seen as supreme ruler for a year and would be encouraged to take on a bird-like appearance, growing out their nails and shaving their head. But to get that position, their chosen champion would have to succeed in a very tough competition. These chosen champions would dive down tall steep cliffs and swim to an inlet where they would have to grab an egg from a Suri tern or a Manutera and bring it back unbroken. So swim all the way back and climb up a sheer cliff face, all with an unbroken egg. And that makes holding an egg in a spoon sound like a piece of cake, right? But the first champion to bring back an egg led to the leader they represented becoming ruler. But obviously many didn't make it all the way through the competition. Many died from falls they took, sharks, or the cutthroat edge of the competition. On to number 7, Freedomites, aka Sons of Freedom. In Saskatchewan, Canada, Daokober people had a small group within them called the Sons of Freedom. The Daokober people were a spiritual Christian group that originated from Russia. And the Sons of Freedom were a cult that came out of them during a time of economic tensions. The Sons of Freedom stood for communal living, nudity, and anarchy. They were mainly known for their public demonstrations they performed in the nude. The demonstrations were to show their strong opposition to the materialistic tendencies of society. But they went further than peaceful demonstrations. Completely against the typically pacifist ways of the Daokober people, they committed acts of terror in the name of their beliefs. They committed arson and bombing to homes, government buildings, churches, schools, and railroads. Number 6. The Order of the Solar Temple. Now, I feel like anytime we talk about a cult here, this one comes up, but it's not without a valid reason. The ritual of this cult was ritual death. After having a ritualistic Last Supper, 53 members killed themselves either by using poison, bullets, smothering, or other causes. In a sect of the cult in Switzerland, in an underground temple, the bodies were found laid out in a circle. Their feet were all touching and their heads, covered in plastic bags, were outwards. Later on, in France, bodies of members from the cult were found out laid in the same manner. Altogether, the cult practices resulted in the deaths of 74 people. Number 5. Superior Universal Alignment. Valentina de Andrade led a UFO cult in the 80s. She claimed she received a message from extraterrestrials that God didn't exist and that Jesus was an alien. She also said that true believers would be saved from the end times, but one group could not leave with her on her spaceship. She believed boys born after 1981 were possessed by evil and had to be purged. With some families, she told the parents of those boys to leave them with other family members and then they could board their spaceship. But her views changed. By 1993, members of the cult are believed to have sexually assaulted, mutilated, or killed at least 19 boys between 8 and 13 years old. Some were even castrated. Andrade herself was acquitted of all charges since she wasn't in the area when the crimes were committed, but her words were enough to persuade her followers. At number 4, the Church of Sacrifice. Back in 1912 in Lafayette, Louisiana, Clementine Barnabette was a high priestess of the Church of Sacrifice. At only 18, she led a cult with a belief system that riches and immortality could be gained through human sacrifice. She wasn't all talk either. She confessed to axing 17 people to death, including 2 families because they refused to obey the messages from God, and apparently she convinced the followers of her church to do the same gruesome killings. All in all, the cult in its entirety brutally killed 7 families, a number amassing to 40 people. At number 3, the Ant Hill Kids. Roch Thoreau had a doomsday cult between 1977 and 1989. The way he exercised his power only got worse and worse as time went on. This man who called himself Moses didn't have too many rituals, but the way he disciplined was routinely similar. If anyone did anything he deemed out of line, they were up for punishment, and it didn't take much to get there. Thoreau demanded absolute loyalty, and if that wasn't given, he would get angry and punish his followers. He would punch people in the stomach or hit them with a 4-inch thick club if they ate more than their given portion of food, and not even pregnant women were spared. He forced the members of his commune to break their own legs with sledgehammers, shoot each other in the shoulders, and eat each other's feces or their own. He would have people stand naked in any weather, sun, rain, or snow, if they acted out of line. He even nailed children to trees and prompted others to throw rocks at them. Beyond that, he plucked out people's hairs one by one if he got really angry. At number 2, the Fall Rivers Cult. This cult was led by Carl Drew, a pimp that believed he was the son of Satan. In rituals in the woods, he would speak in voices and tongues. But there wasn't anything too scandalous or illegal in the cult taking place until Drew decided sacrifices need to be made. Human sacrifices. The first victim was beaten and stoned to death while tied up with a fishing line. The next was killed the same way, arranged on a makeshift kind of altar. The last victim chosen was the one that witnessed the first murder. She was going to talk to the police, but Drew found out. He sacrificed her the same way as the other 2 women. But after that, he also broke her neck with his bare hands, got another cult member to slit her throat, cut an X into her chest, and used the blood to draw an X on the other cult member's forehead. After that, he kicked the victim's head until it came off. And at number 1, the Chicago Rippers. This is another one I've mentioned before, but their rituals are truly disturbing. The core of their rituals was the mutilation and murder of women. The leader, Robin Gecht, and his 3 followers were horrifying in their acts. They would kidnap a woman and bring them back to the leader's apartment. Then the ritual would begin. The ritual involved taking turns sexually assaulting the victim at Gecht's apartment, then removing a body part with piano wire. From there, it got more disturbing. One of the victims survived the ritual and being dumped by railroad tracks. When she was found, she described the group and they were apprehended and brought to justice, thankfully. And on that note,
coming in at number 10, we have the Nexium. The Nexium have been in the news a lot recently. I'm not totally sure if I'm pronouncing it right because it's spelled very strangely. The cult was allegedly an American marketing company that offered professional and personal development through a series of executive success programs. Now it turns out that it was basically a pyramid scheme, which, you know, kinda sucks, but beyond that, it seems that the Nexium have been accused of housing a cult called DOS, or often called the Vow. This is a cult where women are branded and forced into sexual slavery, allegedly. Nexium's leader, Keith Ryanair, is said to be the head of the cult too. Here's a snap of one of the so-called branding wounds. Now each stamp is said to contain Ryanair's initials. Dynasty actress Catherine Oxenberg claims that the group brainwashed her daughter, convincing her to send them nudes as collateral so that she's deterred from ever leaving. On top of that, it is said that members are said to provide secrets and bank details to stop them ever departing. It seems that in the DOS cult, members are forced to recruit more people, and if they don't, they're beaten with paddles. It is said that there is an Emmy award-winning actress high up in the group recruiting new members. Now this is all going on in Albany, New York, apparently. Actress Alison Mack of Smallville has pleaded guilty to racketeering charges brought against her for her involvement in the cult. She said, "I'm very sorry for those who I've hurt through my misguided adherence to Keith Ryanair's teachings." Okay, was anyone else sitting there listening to this thinking about the whole collateral thing and thinking it sounds similar to another popular American organization? Because hello, Church of Scientology at number 9. A lot of people consider the Church of Scientology to be a cult, and I mean... Actress Elizabeth Moss has urged people to be more considerate towards people who have different beliefs to them, which I can totally get on board with. But that being said, the rumours surrounding the church are actually pretty intense. The church is famously attended by Tom Cruise. Now, if the rumours are to be believed, then the Church of Scientology gets people in with a personality test. It then gets them to work at the church for free or donate a boatload of money in order to proceed to the next level. They are also required to give collateral to the church and sign a billion-year contract to the cause. As they climb up the level, they are taught about the intergalactic overlord Xenu. On the Scientology website, there is a frequently asked question page titled, "Is Scientology a cult?" Now, according to the church themselves, no, it isn't. I quote, "It is a religion in the fullest sense of the word." They would say that though, wouldn't they? Coming in at number 8, we have the cargo cult. The cargo cult story is basically a morality lesson for those thinking of abusing their powers over others. Stephen Tari gathered 6,000 disciples in Papua New Guinea's jungles and encouraged them to be part of his sect. He started wearing white robes to conduct his sermons and preached his own version of gospel, calling himself Black Jesus. His cult relocated to the jungle and lived a somewhat tribalistic existence with Tari at the helm. As well as indoctrinating people to believe he was a holy man, he also encouraged them to do his bidding. He would lead people to murder and eat others. On one occasion, he even slaughtered a virgin that he called his flower girl and encouraged his followers to drink her blood. One mother testified that she was made to drink her own daughter's blood. Now, at one point, Tari was sent to jail for his crimes, but he managed to break free and back into the arms of his former cult. However, in 2013, he kinda got his just desserts. The cult went too far when they abducted and killed a 15-year-old schoolgirl from a nearby village. 80 men from her village then set upon Tari ahead of a big feast his cult followers had planned for him. Now, he was pretty savagely hacked to death, but probably fair. Authorities in Papua New Guinea are worried that the cult still exists, with a new leader taking charge. Coming in at number 7, we have the Agori sect. Just when you thought you already had enough flesh-eating cults for one video, I am bringing in another, and they have a weird sex ritual thing going on too. Cults. So the Agori sect are involved in an ancient religion. They worship the Hindu goddess Shiva, or sometimes called Kali. Often this goddess is associated with death and destruction. A website I found about the sect told me that when Kali wants satisfaction, the usually celibate sect find a corpse to, you know, I don't need to say it, do I? This isn't the extent of their relations with the dead either. They will also eat their flesh from time to time. They also do believe in spiritual healing and transformative power, which is less threatening. I was almost in a bit of a, you know what, you do you kind of space, so long as they aren't hurting anyone and the dead people they do, you know, get with are kind of like former cult members that would have consented to that. But anyway, do you know what? After watching a video of the Agori talking to a journalist, I thought, again, maybe this isn't okay. And when I say maybe, I absolutely don't want to tangle with them. So basically the journalist goes to meet them and he's given a crown of teeth to wear, which is one thing.
Okay. Alright. Okay. Maybe I'll take this off right now and then...
But then the journalist asks a fair question and the answer is very stressful. Have a listen.
People on that side of the river are so afraid of the Agori.
Okay, the final straw for me is when this happens.
Why do...
Rightio then. Coming in at number 6, we have the Superior Universal Alignment. Luckily this cult no longer exists, but historically speaking, you wouldn't have wanted to meet them. The SUA was a cult founded by a woman in her mid-70s, Valentina de Andrade. It seems that the cult were prevalent in the 90s in Argentina. Their satanic murder rituals kind of overshadow the group's intentions, but it seems that de Andrade believes that she received a message from aliens that God does not exist, and that actually Jesus himself was an alien who was tasked with bringing about the end of times. Those who purged evil would be saved. How would one go about purging evil? Well, according to the aliens and the SUA, it would be killing boys born after 1981. Before, fine. Afterwards, evil. First, she tried to convince people to give up their children so they could have a spot on her spaceship, but in the end, the cult leader straight up encouraged her followers to abduct boys for sacrifice. In Argentina, at least 19 boys were mutilated and murdered, 5 of them were never found, and a bunch more escaped, but some of the escapees had already been castrated. So grim. While the cult leaders were brought to justice in 2003, it seems that offshoots of the SUA may still exist in Austria. Coming into number 5, we have the Order of the Solar Temple. This cult was founded in 1984 by Joseph de Mambro and Luc Journet in Geneva, but they also had offshoots, and perhaps still do, in France, Australia, Canada, and Spain. The order seemed to have been inspired by the ancient Knights Templar of France. The temple had many secret underground churches in Switzerland and had so-called lodges elsewhere in the world, covered in riches. It seems that the cult believed that God was a solar king and that their mission was to unite Christianity and Islamic faiths. In order to prepare for the second coming, the cult murdered a baby with a wooden stake at a lodge in Quebec. How to unite the people? Kill a baby. It's a kind of culty sense I've come to expect. Later they staged a reenacted Last Supper before killing dozens of people across the world, whilst other cult members committed mass suicides in response to, I quote, the hypocrisies and oppression of this world. 2 days before Christmas in 1995, 16 bodies were discovered in a star formation in the Vercors mountain of France. One of the dead included Olympian Edith Bonlieu. Now, one of the leaders arrested was famous composer Michael Tabarnik. He was cleared of the charges and is now a free man. He was the leader of the Brussels Philharmonic Orchestra right up until 2015. Coming into number 4, we have Happy Science. Wait, but the name sounds so friendly and fun, like I'm happy and I like science, maybe I found my people. Okay, don't joke about joining cults, Rebecca. People will take you seriously. So Happy Science are a new religious and spiritual cult founded by Ryu Okawa. Did I say that right? I don't know. Happy Science also doesn't have a lot to do with science at all, but they are working on the happy part. How do they get happy? Well, by denying historical massacres, saying they simply didn't happen. Happy Science claim to have 10 million followers around the world, which I do think is a bit of a stretch. They also claim they are in contact with aliens. And I know what you're thinking, but they have picture proof, except these pictures look suspiciously like stills from Star Wars in frames. Coming into number 3, we have the Temple of Lucifer. Vice did a great documentary about Colombia's Temple of Lucifer, and they are a satanic cult led by Victor Damian Rozzo, who claims to be none other than the son of the devil himself. It seems that Rozzo used to be a Catholic, but has decided to give his life to Lucifer and has made it his mission to recruit so-called Luciferians. The Vice video was published in 2017 and has had 2.4 million views. I honestly think it deserves more, it's a pretty interesting watch. So the Church of Lucifer actually has some pretty sweet decor. It's very nouveau Satan. There's sultry red leather chairs, red curtains, a big black and red satanic pentacle on the floor, backlit upside down crosses, and an altar to the Dark Lord himself. Kinda made it sound a bit like I'm talking about Voldemort. I'm actually talking about SCP-1, the Red Devil himself, the creation of all evil. Rozzo has claimed that a lot of high-profile people, including celebrities, have secretly visited the temple. In the Vice documentary, it seems that locals are perturbed by the amount of animals ritually sacrificed by the group. Do you want a peep inside of the church? I think you do. Now his sermon is being led in Spanish, but let's have a look anyway.
Reconoció, le dio los créditos a mi señor Lucifer. Él mismo admitió que Lucifer.
Rozzo's invites people to become millionaires by making pacts with the devil, and honestly, I think that's kind of a bad idea. I don't really believe in it, but like, just go. Trust yourself to be a billionaire, not the devil. Ooh, coming into number 2, we have Aleph. Aleph, formerly known as Shinrikyo, is a horrifying Japanese doomsday cult. Again, I'm really sorry if I pronounced that wrong. This is their symbol, so watch out for it. Aleph was founded in 1987 by Shoko Ashara, a 40-year-old legally blind and former yoga teacher. He posed the religion under the guise of being a Buddhist group, and the group has traditionally been obsessed with prophecies. Aleph have been known to distribute anime and manga propaganda that cleverly hides their more radical ideals. Basically, to simplify this cult, they believe that the end of the world is coming and they want to be ready. The group have carried out several horrifying chemical attacks on the public too, including most famously the March 1995 Tokyo subway attack, which killed 13 commuters but affected over 1,000 people. Those who fall out of favor with the cult are murdered, their bodies are dumped. One super fun example was Kiyoshi Kiara, who was the brother of a member who escaped. He was abducted from Tokyo and taken to a compound near Mount Fuji, then cooked in a microwave-powered incinerator. You don't want to hustle with Aleph. While their leader Ashara has been arrested, Aleph still has around 2,000 members. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the KKK. Klan is basically another word for cult, and the Ku Klux Klan are an enduring hate cult that was founded on Christmas Eve no less in 1865 in Tennessee, USA. It seems that the headquarters these days hidden away in Arkansas. Most of you will have heard of the KKK. They're a white supremacist group associated with right-wing extremism and neo-Nazi ideals, even though they predate the Nazis. The KKK were more prevalent in the late 1800s to mid 1900s and would frequently be behind lynchings of African Americans. The KKK have been deemed a terrorist organization. Famously, they held terrifying rallies in their cult disguise costumes, and they would burn crosses and set fire to buildings of their enemies and worse. Children would and still are being raised in circles like this, believing staunchly in white purification. The history of the KKK is long, vast, gross, and not over. Ku Klux Klan chapters still exist in the US as well as Europe, Canada, and weirdly, Fiji.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Angel's Landing. In the early 2000s, a man named Daniel Perez, or Lou Castro, led a cult that lived at Angel's Landing. They all lived on a 20-acre property outside of Wichita, Kansas. Now, Perez had control of these followers because he convinced them that he was an angel and a seer that could look into the future and know exactly when they were going to die. Obviously, that was false. In reality, he would kill off his followers and use their life insurance policies to become rich. He was getting away with it for a while until police looked into the death of one of his followers, Patricia Hughes. In 2003, her dead body was found on the compound. Then in 2006, her husband mysteriously passed away. This all led the police back to Perez, who had changed his identity to Lou Castro. Eventually, he was caught and sentenced to 80 years in prison for the lengthy list of his disturbing crimes he committed. Yikes. In our 9th spot today, we have the Children of God. Formed in 1968, the Children of God, now referred to as the Family International, is a cult that believes in salvation and spiritual revolution and happiness. But as the group got a big following, their beliefs shifted. From there, the followers were forced to engage in dark practices, like having the females lure men into the cult by having intercourse with them. Sadly, the followers were often mistreated in multiple ways. One woman who was a part of this cult as a child referred to it as living hell. It literally traumatized her. 31 people died at the hands of this cult. And like I said, it's still active, but in 2004 just changed its name to Family International. Moving on to number 8, we have the Brethren. This one is quite interesting. So the Brethren have also been given the name the Body of Christ, or Brothers and Sisters, and even Garbage Eaters. Why? Well, you're about to find out, that's for sure. So for starters, this cult believes that the end of the world is near, and so they are told they have to purify themselves in preparation for the end of the world. They do this by selling their possessions and breaking ties with all their family and friends. They then live as vagrants, eating garbage, hardly ever bathing, and never receive any medical treatment. They also do weird jobs to make money, but then any money they earn just goes right into the group. Due to this lifestyle, a number of group members have had serious mental breakdowns, others have sadly taken their lives. Not a cult you would want to be a part of. Honestly, no cult you want to be a part of. Coming in at number 7, we have the Raelism. Founded in 1974, this cult believes that life was created by aliens. Yes, you heard me correctly, aliens. These aliens then assumed human form to go check in on Earth and see how things are going. These aliens are said to be people like Jesus or the Buddha. So this cult spends their days worshipping space aliens. The scariest part? In 2000, they claimed that they founded a cloning company and that they managed to successfully clone a human. Literally everyone went nuts, and the White House even got involved in this, even though they never had any proof of the cloning. Unless the White House was like, okay, we'll pay you guys, just give us this device so we can clone people, but it stays between us. Dude, imagine? Okay, like that's freaky. Come in our 6th spot, we have Matamoros cult, aka the human sacrifice cult. In 1989, a man named Mark Kilroy went missing when out on spring break. Turns out he was kidnapped and then lost his life to this cult. This cult was known to kidnap people and take their lives as a sacrifice. The leader of this cult, Adolfo Constanzo, told his members that by doing so, they would become invincible. Why would they need to become invincible? Well, they were not only a cult, but they were also drug dealers as well. But Constanzo promised that they would never be caught by the police so long they continued to harm and sacrifice others. In the end, Constanzo was caught and then was killed in jail. But rumor has it that the cult is still around to this day. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Doomsday Cult. Now, this one is pretty vague because there are a number of doomsday cults out there, but they all pretty much follow the same belief. Now, there are 2 types of doomsday cults. One that predicts disasters and thinks that the end is near, and the other one tries to destroy the earth to bring the world to an end. Either way, both are terrifying and you definitely don't want to get mixed up in it. Both cults have been known to brainwash their followers. So they don't believe what the media is telling them and only listen to the lies of their leaders. Either way, they believe that like, hey, we're gonna die soon, or hey, let's try and make everyone die soon. So it's terrifying. Moving on to number 4, we have the Order of the Solar Temple. This cult was born off of the beliefs of the Knights Templar, and is said to be one of the creepiest cults out there. It is believed to have been founded in the late 1970s to early 80s. For the most part, the cult was peaceful. They had some weird beliefs, but they didn't do any harm. That was until 1994, when they believed that a member's son was the Antichrist. As a result, they killed both individuals. Then they enjoyed a Last Supper before taking their own lives by poison. On that day, 53 cult members lost their lives. It's an absolutely terrifying and heartbreaking story. To this day, this cult still exists. Moving on to number 3, we have the Amshinrinko cult. Founded in 1984 by a man named Shoko Ashara, this is a doomsday cult as well as a terrorist organization. Basically, members of the cult believe that the end of the world was near, but that they were going to be the only survivors. Why? Well, the leader said he had powers and could transfer his spiritual power to his followers to take away their sins. In 1995, this cult carried out the deadly Tokyo subway sarin attack, where 13 people died and thousands got injured. Apparently, this was done as an attempt to start the apocalypse, but also to stop the authorities from shutting down their cult. As a result of this attack, 13 members of the group got the death sentence, including the leader Shoko. After his death, the name of the cult was changed, but to this day, it's still active. The cult was never banned and it has about 1,500 followers. Coming in at number 2, we have the Church of Euthanasia. Founded in 1992, this cult literally promoted people to take their own lives. Their whole belief was that the world was dying because of overpopulation. So they were like, let's get people to kill themselves to restore the balance in humanity. They even set up an assistance hotline where people could call in and someone would help them take their own life. That is seriously the most messed up thing I have ever heard. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Church of Scientology. Is the Church of Scientology a cult or religion? Well, a number of people think that it is indeed a cult. You've probably heard of it because of famous Hollywood star Tom Cruise. He's a very prominent figure in the church. And this cult is certainly one you never want to get involved in. For starters, once you're in, the church will force you to disconnect from people not involved in the cult. This includes your family and your friends. Jenna Miscavige Hill, a member of the church that left in 2005, had this to say about it, and I quote, "I was allowed to see my parents only once a week at best, sometimes not for years." So when you do want to leave, you literally have no one to go back to since you cut them out of your life. That's the other thing, leaving is so difficult. Apparently they will intimidate and harass you into staying. According to another ex-member, they also brainwash their followers. And if anyone misbehaves, they send them to this prison camp, where they are basically worked to death and barely fed to teach them never to be disobedient. There's also rumors that this cult commits crimes and murders, but they're so powerful that they can just get away with it all. If that's not scary, then I don't know what is.